All right, another Old State Saloon-cast. We have Matt Landman with us today. He's a humanitarian. He is an activist. He's a producer of movies. We're going to catch up with everything that he's got going on because it's a lot, and kind of break down where we are with everything and see where it goes. Thanks for being here, Matt.
I really appreciate you having me on. It's nice to reach your audience and to be here in your home.
What brought you out to this area? Everybody knows we're in Eagle, Idaho here. What brought you out for this trip?
Well, this trip was to screen my film, Frankenskies, which was released in 2017, and then also to get an interview at the Karlfeldt Center with Dr. Karlfeldt on chemtrails and health aspects of it and Alzheimer's and the impact of the spraying. And that'll be in my sequel film, Frankenskies 2, Climate Chains, like shackles, that I'm working on that should be released next year.
Awesome. We look forward to seeing that. If you haven't seen Frankenskies, the original, check that out, and we'll have a link there below this video. But I want to start out with a question. Maybe you don't get very often, but can you tell us, why do you do what you do?
Well, that's a great question. To be blunt, it's a spiritual calling in my life. I started off kind of in denial with the chemtrails, like, oh, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, who knows what's really going on? But then I had this about face when I realized that we're in the midst of a spiritual war, a battle of good and evil, and surely there would be some transparency and scrutiny if what was going on was for our best interest. And then as you dig deeper, I realized that we're up against a lot, and so I've committed my life to this, and then it's expanded into other realms of truth, because truth is all-encompassing. I see it as you can't be like half pregnant with the truth. You're either pregnant or you're not. And if you're pregnant with the truth, you embrace it all, and all the truths are equal, and so all these other truths are important as well. But the path of the chemtrail activist has been quite a journey for me, but I see it as a spiritual journey in my world.
And so as a result, you've traveled quite a bit. You've spoken quite a bit. You've been on podcasts. You have your own podcast. What are some of the highlights of doing this that you look back and feel most accomplished about?
Thank you for asking that. That's a great question. My biggest accomplishment was in 2018. Bill Gates was to dim the sun in the sun dimming experiment in Tucson, Arizona. I moved from Canada to Arizona, and I hosted that was my third global chemtrail summit or anti-geoengineering summit. And we packed the house in this conference hall at the University of Arizona, which was the heart of the beast, because University of Arizona has a geoengineering master's program, and a lot of funding goes in there to brainwash the youth which is so ironic. They go outside, look at the sky, they don't realize it's ongoing, but they're actually getting a degree in something that they don't realize is actually ongoing, with the idea that they'll be doing it in the future. Totally naive. So we had a conference, which was amazing success, and we had a protest on Mother's Day for Mother Earth, and a concert. And the entire city of Tucson, environmentalist groups and all different people of walks of life, learned that Bill Gates was behind this plan to do this sun-dimming experiment through Worldview Enterprises. It's a high-tech balloon company, where they go up in these balloons and release these payloads, and they wanted to do 2 different sizes of nanoparticulate aluminum to dim the sun in the summer of Tucson, to normalize the spraying with the media and say, hey, look, we've got this solution. It dims this heating of the earth. We're going to cool it down, save you from global warming. So we had this big protest, and they put that experiment, they shelved it. It didn't happen. And so that was a big moment for me. Also, I've been on 700 About podcasts and radio shows. I've been on Coast to Coast AM 7 years in a row now, and for 7 times. And that's always a big hit, millions of listeners. The last time I went on was for Earth Day, April of this year, I believe. And people reach out to me from all over the world. In that instance, I had actually some amazing contacts from Idaho reach out to me. I had a farmer reach out who is in contact with the organic certification department in Idaho, and they're actually listening to him about the aluminum raining down on the soil and plants, and they're listening and willing to have the conversation of, if food has aluminum on it, then it shouldn't be labeled that way, organic. And there should be a discernment, distinction between chemtrail sprayed food and not. And we can work into greenhouses and do that through awareness and education on the topic. I've hosted various conferences, and then just recently I went to Scotland and gave a speech at the first anti-geoengineering protest in Scotland in Edinburgh, which was an amazing visit. And I got to see some old world architecture in Scotland and put some puzzle pieces together. It was an amazing journey. And then I went to Glasgow, Scotland for their second protest. I gave another speech and was able to meet some amazing people in England and opening up that world in London. And there's this, it seems like the UK in general is having this awakening right now. I think that the lockdowns really got to them and the restrictions that they're going through, they're coming together. The villages are more tight-knit, and they talk a lot more than maybe the United States, it seems. But people are really waking up over there. So that's happening, and I'm proud to be a part of that. And also I created an EMF protection clothing line. So I'm really proud of the EMF realm that I'm in and what have you. It's all day-to-day, little successes, little victories. Like I hosted a screening yesterday in Meridian, Boise suburb. And we put out 50 seats and 50 people came. And that was also an amazing success. So little baby steps towards big goals.
And that clothing company is sparrowgear.com, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where SPERO gear.com. So people can check that out. We're going to get into EMF a little bit later. But you talked about Bill Gates and trying to dim the sun, and that they shelved that whole plan when you guys got together. My question for you is, what do you think the real reason they decided to not move forward with it is?
Opposition. They want everyone, bowing to them and saying, "Oh, holier than thou, yay, we will do what you say to save us from ourselves." And up against a lot of opposition, they didn't think that their little plan would work out the way that they wanted. They want everyone excited about it, and that normalization campaign would have grown into more. And they wanted it to snowball into acceptance, and they didn't see that happening. So I think that's why they shelved it. I mean, yes, it's ongoing, but not in the public eye that it could have been if that was a successful attempt.
And the attempt, everything about it's evil. And I think so. You can draw a logical conclusion from that, or at least I feel like I can, based off hearing your story, that activism matters. And, I come from a world of a type of people who seem to just kind of put their head down and work and don't comment on things and don't cause a problem and just do your own quiet thing with your own life and with your own church and mind your own business and let other people do what they want to do, so to speak. The problem with that is that it lacks activism, it lacks getting involved, it lacks engaging. And if you don't engage to stop those evil things from happening, they're going to take off and proliferate. Thoughts?
Well, activism is very important, and people don't grasp the power of their voice. I like to say, if you like to knit for truth. What your passion is, you can direct that towards truth. And maybe you're passionate about fluoride or GMOs, or you're against the lies that the COVID lockdowns brought up. Whatever it may be, you can play your part in bringing the truth awareness to people. And what better person to bring the light to your friends, families, and peers than yourself? Like these people don't have seed planters of truth, but you can be that. And it's up to us to plant these seeds and then to create a fertile environment where those seeds can be nourished and finally germinate and grow into massive redwoods of truth. But first, we have to be gentle with people and meet them where they're at. And the media and whatnot, they're really good at programming people and pinning us against one another in this othering, right? Oh, the conspiracy theorists are these minority others, and I'm not them. I'm going to get in line with everyone else. But really, the truth is surfacing, and there's a mass awakening happening, and we all need to play our part.
All right, let's jump to Frankenskies, the original. I'm kind of curious what, brought you to that point of deciding to do that. Did you have a history in filmmaking? How did everything come together for it to happen?
Right. Well, I like to tell people, because people like to think, oh, he must have come from money or something. Like I couldn't be an activist, but I am just a normal guy from a normal walk of life. I grew up in Virginia, And I would make fun of people who thought astrology or crystals or spoke outside of the box. I never thought anything that I believe now could possibly be true. Like they're injecting poison into babies, like how could that possibly be real? But after 9/11, where I lived in the DC area at the time and had a girlfriend in New York, and after I watched a documentary, actually, Loose Change by Dylan Avery, and then Zeitgeist, the first one, not the new ones. And these films actually opened my eyes. And whereas I had a business degree, I just graduated from Virginia Tech, I really wanted to get into filmmaking. I never knew it would be for truth. I thought I was going to be maybe an actor working in Hollywood or maybe Vancouver or something like that. So after I got out of university in 2003, I moved to the West Coast and slowly but surely made my way up north to the northern portion of Northern California. And I went back to school, got a master's in business. And there I went to film school and learned the tricks of the trade, but I didn't think I'd become a documentary filmmaker. But then when the truth started unraveling, I was able to use my skills to spread the truth. But it's been a journey, and it's all step by step in the direction of truth, and here I am. But I never thought it would be like this. It's just like I kind of opened up my heart and soul to guidance, divine guidance, and the way was paved for me. I now think it was my destiny, but it's like I kind of asked for direction, and it was doors opened, and I trusted in those. I mean, I never thought that I could turn activism into my life and actually pay my bills with activism, but here I am. I'm fully encroached in and in love with my life, and I provide EMF protection and awareness and education, and I do the chemtrails thing with the documentary and the sequel that I'm working on, but I don't work for anybody or bow to anybody or play those Matrix kind of games anymore, and I'm really proud of that.
Great. So when in Frankenskies, what was the main point there of that film?
Well, the point was, so I grew up in the DC area, and my friends and family and what have you, they're all in mainstream kind of jobs, working for a government contractor or whatever it may be. And when I first came on to, well, let's back up. So I got out of school with the master's in business in Northern California. And at first I was like, I'm going to utilize my degree and work in finance and, get another office job. But that was a nightmare, just like every other office job I'd ever had, and with corruption and lies and deceit and all sorts of things, working in finance. And so I was given an opportunity to work on an organic farm, which I'd never done before. So I gave it a chance, and day one, I learned so much. For one, I never even knew that potatoes grew potatoes. Like I grew up in the city, there was potatoes in my cupboard trying to grow, and I had no idea what they were doing, making eyes and things like that. I never knew the abundance that was the potato. And my first day on the farm, not only did I learn about different varieties of potatoes, but I learned about how easy they grow, and you can even grow them in a dry farming environment where you don't have to irrigate. And on the farm, I literally got grounded. My last name's Landman, so of course I need to be working on a farm on the land. But I literally got grounded and connected with the earth, and then connected with the sky, because you're outside all day harvesting squash or planting vegetables or whatever you may be doing on a daily basis. And the weather impacts your day-to-day life. So what first happened with me is I learned about weather engineering by working on this farm, where we were due for a 1 week, 100% chance of rain. And we're in the midst of a catastrophic California drought that was impacting farming a lot. So I was told to get on my rain boots and my rain jacket and come to work, start harvesting pumpkins and squash in the field, because they were going to rot, because it was an early fall rainstorm that was coming. And on the edge of this storm, all of these planes showed up, about a dozen. And whereas on a given day you'd see one plane fly over, this was, to my statistics background, an abnormality, an outlier, an irregular pattern of appearance. All these planes show up on the edge of the storm system, and these planes were leaving these persistent linear cirrus cloud formations out of the back of the jets. So I started to wake up to it, but didn't really know what I was seeing. And it took a conversation with a friend back home telling me to just look up the word chemtrails, because I was venting to him that nobody knew about 9/11, and I was surrounded by college kids that didn't know much about anything. But he said to me, well, what about chemtrails? That's right in everyone's face. So when my awakening started to happen, I started digging into resources to share with everyone because I wanted to tell everyone else what was going on. And I found some documentaries of sorts and some resources, but nothing was good enough. There's this term that I like to use that one of my mentors a long time ago told me, the turd in the punch bowl. So bear with me. You can have this amazing party, right? Everyone's there. Everyone's happy. Everything's perfect. You got the DJ. Everybody's happy, right? Dancing on the dance floor. But if there's a turd in your punch bowl, that's all people are going to remember. Everything else is going to be discredited, and people are going to talk about your party for years. Like, I was drinking out of the punch bowl, and there's a freaking turd in there, right? So it's a metaphor for activism in the truth. So you can put together the best documentary in the world, but if there's something in there that people can tear you to pieces about because it's not true, because it's a corollary relationship and not a causal one. For instance, in some of these documentaries, people were filming dead trees and dead bushes and saying that this definitely came from the chemtrails. There's no doubt about it, without any scientific backing or anything like this. And if I was to share this with my grandmother, my coworkers, my peers from back home, they would dismiss me. Mm-hmm. They would dismiss me and just say, oh, Matt, you're back on your 9/11 conspiracy tip. Just leave us alone and go back to California, right? So I wanted something I could share with people that they couldn't turn a blind eye to. So Frankenskies, I realized it had to have some teeth. And what it is it starts off in 1920s, and it's a historical chronological timeline piece that goes from 1920 to 2017 when the film was made. And if you sit down and watch the first 10 minutes, it's obvious that they've been working on sharpening their tools and figuring out how to do what they're already doing for some time. But you really need the history to be able to sink your teeth in and to realize what's going on. So the reason why I put together Frankenskies is because I didn't have a resource to share with people. And, having them sit down and giving them a 3-hour-long presentation, it wasn't enough to go over the patents and all this stuff. Like, someone needs to be able to take the movie into the comfort of their living room and watch it on their own terms without you over their shoulder telling them how to think, how to feel. The media already does that, tells everyone what to think, how to feel, and they want everybody on board programmed the same way. So my goal is to deprogram the people and show them the light with the film and the conferences and different presentations that I give.
So for the people who are basically newbies to hearing this information and considering it for the first time, some basics, so can you give us the basic definition of cloud seeding as opposed to chemtrails when people use those terms? What do they mean and what's the difference?
Well, cloud seeding, which is interesting because I've got newspaper clippings from the 1960s and 70s where cloud seeding was common practice. And even farmers would seed clouds with the nutrients that their crops needed. So say you need to get potassium all over your crops or nitrogen or whatever, phosphorus, whatever it may be. You can literally seed passing clouds with tiny particulates. The reason they call it seeding clouds is because you're introducing a tiny particulate that the water molecules will attract to and then get heavy and drop out, and then you get rainfall. Particulates can be smoke, dust, or silver iodide, or even, which is totally ironic, what the weather engineers use in the Air Force, and it's admitted in my film Frankenskies, is dry ice is a great cloud seed, which is concentrated carbon dioxide, frozen carbon dioxide. So concentrated carbon dioxide is being used to dump in the atmosphere to engineer the weather. Meanwhile, we're being told that carbon dioxide is a big problem, and it's our fault. It's our fault, and it's doing all this heating. Whereas carbon dioxide isn't really a heating gas at all. It's not. It's a cooling gas. And only 0.04%, not even 1%, 0.04% of our atmosphere is carbon dioxide. So that's an important piece. So cloud seeding, which has been popular but kind of got swept under the rug because the knowledge would be there and people would be like, well, I'm going to alleviate my farm drought by seeding clouds, right? You couldn't just gobble up farmland. Like Bill Gates and Big Ag are being very predatory with this control of the weather. Bill Gates is now the largest agriculture farm owner in the United States. Bill Gates is also, quote, the sugar daddy for geoengineering weather modification. And if he can be behind the scenes pulling the strings on who gets drought, who gets rain, who gets sunshine, who doesn't, then, control the weather, control the world. Lyndon B. Johnson, quote, So cloud seeding is making rain from passerby clouds, making the rain dump where you want it. Hydrological dams and power plants and Idaho Power admit publicly that they do cloud seeding, and more scrutiny and transparency should come along with that. Like, what days are you doing it? Can you point out what planes are doing it? And what are those planes that aren't your cloud seeding planes? Who are they? Where are they going? What are they doing? Scrutiny and transparency needs to come to the forefront of this situation. But cloud seeding is not new news. But they're trying to introduce it, it seems, as a new thing. So Dubai just did cloud seeding and resulted in flooding, and it got viral on the internet. And then the world is like, well, if Dubai can do it, why can't we? We can. We have been for some time, but it's been weaponized, and in weaponizing it, the knowledge is swept under the rug so that we have the tech as a nation, and other battling countries don't have the exact technology that we have. Just on a side note, we, the United States, flooded the Ho Chi Minh Trail publicly, public knowledge, during Vietnam. This campaign called Project Popeye was to displace and disrupt trade routes for the Viet Cong and what have you, when we were in that war never was declared by Congress, whatever it was, whatever you want to call it, the Vietnam conflict. And then after World War II, the United Nations came together and voted, I believe 58 countries to 0, that weather warfare was not allowed because you're going to impact neighboring countries, you're going to have crimes against humanity, civilians are going to be impacted, all these sort of things. So cloud seeding is not a new thing, but it still is under the realm of conspiracy to some people because of the control mechanisms through the programming, the media, what have you. Geoengineering is manipulating the weather, but primarily to dim the sun, to save us from the supposed heating of the earth and the global warming. So geoengineering is this play of manipulating the clouds and manipulating the weather, but primarily what it is spraying persistent linear cirrus cloud formations out of the back of jets, so spraying these persistent lines out of the back of planes and making new weather patterns with this. Geoengineering is this big umbrella word that's complicated, but it is a synonym for chemtrails, also solar radiation management. There's a lot of different terms, stratospheric aerosol injections. They like to muddy the waters with different terminology to confuse us, but they're all synonyms, they're all treason, and it's been ongoing. So geoengineering is the spraying of different constituents, primarily aerosolized metals. Aluminum, barium, strontium are the primary constituents, but these things are sprayed to create an artificial cloud layer to supposedly diminish, lessen how much light is getting to the ground level to supposedly lower the impacts of global warming. But in reality, what's happening, which we can get to all this, but while it's on the tip of my tongue, what's really happening is geoengineering is creating heat waves by blanketing the sky and trapping in heat. If the clouds are low on a lower level, they trap heat, and if clouds are really high, they don't trap heat and they make it cooler. But these clouds that are being sprayed in the stratosphere and troposphere are low enough that on many occasions heat waves are being created, and then the finger is being pointed at us for creating global warming, and then this technocratic new world order is rearing its ugly head saying, oh, it's your fault, we got to do something like geoengineering to save you from the real problem that they're creating, this classic Hegelian dialectic problem reaction solution. So yeah, there's that. I could talk about it forever, but I'll let you talk.
Yeah, no problem. That's very interesting. So chemtrails as opposed to that, same thing, or?
Yeah, well, geoengineering and chemtrails, they are synonyms, but also chemtrails is an even bigger umbrella term because things are sprayed that aren't just to modify the weather and dim the sun and what have you. So there's lithium that's been proven and to be in different mists coming off the ocean and coming down from different fallouts from sprays. And lithium is just to influence the population, has nothing to do with the weather. Manganese is also part of the chemtrail constituents. In my next movie, I'll be including Dick Gregory, African-American activist, and Prince, who's also an activist. Both were very vocal about the chemtrail spraying. Dick Gregory specifically talked about the manganese being sprayed in the ghettos, and that immediately people just erupt into violence. So manganese makes you agitated and violent, and people that live near manganese mines have high rates of violence and crime. And evidently come to find out that manganese is sprayed on livestock and makes cows mad. And there was the mad cow disease termed, but it wasn't a disease. It was actually just manganese being sprayed. So manganese, lithium, and different constituents, mercury and whatnot, different things are sprayed on the populace for different reasons. Everyone likes to say depopulation, what have you. I like to say transhumanism, what have you. But there is spraying that's not geoengineering. And so then that comes under the realm of chemtrails in my world. But a lot of people demonize that word. They say, oh, chemtrails is a dirty word, and people are going to put you in this bundled basket of conspiracy theorists. But let them, let them open their eyes, as long as you can present the truth in a grounded fashion. But it's not just geoengineering, and that's a fancy term that makes it sound kind of scientific. And if you're educating yourselves and others, it's important to see a little bit of a difference between the two.
It seems as though this is something that, information about this is certainly controlled or censored by media. And that's why you have a great percentage of the population who tend to, when they hear these things, that triggers things in their mind where they're like, oh, that person must be crazy. It's a conspiracy theory. Et cetera. But you're showing in these videos that these are these are facts. These are not really things that are denied. It's just that there's no coverage on it on, major media sources. And so people just tend to not believe that is true. Would you say that's the case?
Well, definitely. I talk about it in Frankenskies, but the media has been consolidated. Just like 20 years ago, we had about 50 different companies running about 90% of the media. Now it's been consolidated down to about 5 companies, and those are all owned by the same families. And although they seem different, you've got nature.com and then The Economist, they seem like different publications. One's right, one's left, one's middle ground, but they're all controlled by the same players. And they introduce to the public the information, different terminology and verbiage, but still the same. And they will tell you, conspiracy theorists think that chemtrails are real. How dare they? And then everyone puts these people in a box, and they're easily demonized because it's this othering. It's really easy to other people and then to treat them another way because we've been programmed to do so. But people are waking up and taking science and truth into their own hands, and groups are coming together and forming little local alliances and taking the facts and running with them. There's a group in northern Arizona that I like to highlight, in Kingman, Arizona. And these are normal, like farmers and like mill workers, like normal, salt of the earth, nice, like not tinfoil hat wearing people that you would think. And in Arizona, about 10 years ago, where it's desert, cobalt blue, beautiful skies, it's very noticeable when they come and do their engineering of the skies and leave these lines in the skies, whereas they're infrequent and noticeable in the desert, sky, right? So this group came together questioning what was going on and did the research, followed the patents. The patents can tell the story. And then in the patents, it shows that the potential is there for using aluminum, barium, strontium. These are these primary chemtrail constituents. And so activists have the moral responsibility to take science into their own hands. So they tested their hair, their blood, their soil, and rainwater. So on days when they see this irregular pattern of appearance where all of a sudden these planes show up, there's all these planes spraying the skies, whereas they didn't for the past week, right? And then some rain will fall the next day. These activists do their due diligence and get good rainwater samples and then send them to the lab. And lo and behold, they have very high levels of aluminum, barium, and strontium. This wouldn't just be in the rainwater. It wouldn't just be up there floating around these high levels of these constituents and only these things. So people have then corroborated that evidence by testing their blood, testing their soil, matching it with the patents, and being able to statistically, scientifically come up with conclusive evidence of what's happening. But the mainstream media is not going to tell you. So you've got to dig deep to find different bits of truth and put it together on your own. But that's how any rabbit hole is. Really, you have to trust your own discernment, trust your gut, trust your guidance systems. A lot of those are very spiritually inclined, and have the truth speak for itself. But if you're just going to the USA Today and Washington Post, which is owned by Bezos and whatnot, you're not going to get the real truth. But you can see the programming and feel that out for yourself, and then find the counter narrative, because there's always two sides, or even more sides to every story. And it's important for us as potential activists and humans in this world, right, in this toxic environment that we live in. It's important for us to learn to discern and to trust our gut and to cultivate this instinct of awareness, because as we resonate to truths, more truths can become evident as we open that door. But we have to first go on that quest and get down those rabbit holes and be able to find the difference between light and dark. Some of it's so obvious, right? I mean, mercury inject in the jabs and what have you, or the new jabs, like all these different things. I guess I didn't talk to you before about the certain keywords. Should I be filtering my words?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, cool. Because
Yeah.
I don't say COVID or vaccines or
Well,
certain
let's talk
things.
about, we're going to get into censorship next, but keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, I've lost multiple platforms, and now I'm very socially engineered. I'm literally engineered. Like, even in a public setting, I say the word lockdowns. I say, during the lockdowns. I don't say during COVID, and I don't say, and I try to say the word jab or whatever, which is, a little harsh, but it's like there's certain words that I just don't say anymore because I don't want, to be censored and have my
We're really
platforms pulled.
I only expect to stay on X, and even that could go away, So I think we live in a day and age where we got to drive people to our own websites, for that content, and be expecting to do that. Email lists are obviously super important. If you value, Matt Landman, and you want to make sure that you get his information, get on his email list. So these are things, because obviously Facebook can go away, Instagram can go away, like you've had happen recently. Before we get into censorship, Joe, though, which I want to hear about what you've dealt with, you mentioned, the Arizona skies, for example. Okay, so planes would fly over and do the pattern of clouds that you mentioned, and get whatever result, or drop, metals on the land and things like that. And they're doing this. Who is they?
Of course. And it's important. Like, these topics are kind of new to a lot of people. And the thing is, whenever you're approaching a new topic, especially these deep truth concerns, people want to know, or they deserve to know, the who, what, why, where, when, and how. Why? Because when you convey this message to your friends, family, and peers, they're all of a sudden going to ask you all these questions. If you don't have the answers, they're going to just put you back in your box and be like, "Oh, you don't know you don't know this topic that you're speaking of. You must be misinformed. And if you don't have the facts, we're just going to go back to sleep," right? So people that are coming on to this topic, they want to share. It's like the first natural reaction. It's like, look up, I've learned this, and you should know this too. But people are going to ask these questions. So the who is what you asked? Right?
Yeah, who's behind this?
Who's behind this? Yeah, that's a big one. So it's very deep. There's the Department of Energy. That's a really big player in it all. There's NASA. That's a really big player in it all. And then there's subcontractors and the U.S. Air Force, military industrial complex, UN. It's pretty deep. So I'll go through them. NASA has a budget of $80 million per day, not per year. $80 million a day NASA goes through. And I don't know how deep we've gone into NASA. It seems like they lie a lot. I mean, there's so much CGI and whatnot going on there, but that's not really the topic of the conversation. They have an entire program, okay, called CARE, C-A-R-E, where ironically they don't care at all. And it stands for Charged Aerosol Release Experiment, where they, quote, use the atmosphere as a laboratory, where they release barium, aluminum, strontium into the atmosphere to use the atmosphere as a laboratory, right? NASA quote, and they create what's called noctilucent clouds. They gave these clouds a new name. They don't disclose how much of their $80 million per day goes towards this program and how massive it is. But if you look it up on their website, they have drones, planes, helicopters, ground-based stations. They have all of the interwoven network of it all that they could be they alone. But it's not just them, okay? So the Department of Energy which this is just a big mind F when you really get into it. But the Department of Energy, which is behind dirty energy like burning coal, gasoline, oil, all these things, they're being blamed for global warming, right? So we're going to take a big step back. These evil think tanks come together and plan the dystopia, our demise, transhumanism, how to grab land, greedy things, how to make themselves rich, whatever. So the best example that I have is, and I will get back to it, but bear with me, leaded gasoline. So the gasoline was leaded, okay? And lead was spewing out of mufflers all over the country. Neighborhoods were being gassed with lead. Children were getting sick from leaded gasoline. These think tanks came together and they're like, okay, well, we got 5G coming out in like 450 years, and which they had planned, right? And they're like, we don't want them to be able to protect themselves with lead paint. And they're like, well, also, we don't want the petroleum industry to get caught doing what they're doing and poisoning everybody. And they're like, okay, let's just say the kids were eating paint. I'm like, oh, perfect. So they quietly changed the petro to unleaded. So now it's all unleaded gasoline. And they blamed kids eating paint. And they were able to pull these strings to benefit themselves in the future, right? So the Department of Energy, lo and behold, have created what's called the Tropospheric Aerosol Program, which is just a mind-blowing document if you look it up. It's TAP, Tropospheric Aerosol Program, so layer of the atmosphere, troposphere, TAPDOE, Department of Energy, PDF file. So DOE, TAP, PDF. And I've got it on my website, actualactivists.com, where I have a chemtrail section, which is a beautiful website. I highly recommend everyone checking it out. But in 2001, just before 9/11, one of the biggest distractions of our time, this document is released. I usually carry it around with me. It's out of this world, where they map out the launch of this program to spray the troposphere with particulates, aerosolized metals, and what have you, to rein in global warming, right? Well, they realized that they would be blaming themselves for this crackpot idea that the world is heating through anthropogenic means, man-made climate change, whereas really the chemtrails are creating artificial cloud layers and trapping in heat and making heat waves, and they blame us, and then they say, oh, we've got the solution for you, and they've got it already because they've been planning it out. So the Tropospheric Aerosol Program document outlines all of it. It's 100 pages, doesn't use the word contrails, chemtrails, or geoengineering. So it's very much hidden in plain sight, but if you flip all the way back to the glossary in the back, they've got a pie chart on how they're distributing their money. And in 2001, $4 million was spent on risk aversion and detection assessment, meaning they don't want to get caught doing what they're doing. And then they extrapolate these budgets out for years, and by now they're probably spending tens of millions of dollars each year on just not getting caught doing what they're doing. That means controlling the media, controlling the activism, controlling all these different spaces, even Hollywood, through programming, predictive programming, all these sort of things, right? So there's the Department of Energy, and I just touched upon that, and it's pretty deep and layered, but that's just a bit of that. There's the Department of Energy, there's NASA, there's the Air Force, there's independent contractors. There's so many different things at play, and their tech just keep getting better and better. After 9/11, Congress is signing off on budgets that's black ops. So many things they don't even know where the money's going to, and so many drones get cranked out and handed over to these people, and then planes also, when they're decommissioned, they get bought up and gutted and refurbished. And I think so many of these things are pilotless, but it's a very big, intricate, ongoing, massive conspiracy when you look at it with a worldwide kind of play at hand. And then all the while, the UN, World Economic Forum, and all these scumbags are coming together saying, oh no, we've got this big problem that we need to do something about. And they're shutting down farms in the Netherlands. About 3,000 farms recently were shut down in the Netherlands, blaming them for emitting too much nitrogen. So now they're demonizing nitrogen, which is 70% of our air, which nitrogen you could release as much as you want. It wouldn't impact us at all. So yeah, I digress. But they are it's very deep and intricate, but there's a lot of players at play, but they're not coming in and out of normal airports, and all of it is very covert, and they've done a really good job keeping themselves not discovered, primarily through the programming and the conditioning and keeping everybody thinking that only conspiracy nutters would think that this is true.
Agreed. So as we look forward to Frankenskies 2, the sequel, I know that's coming together. What date are you looking at, and how are things shaping up?
I'm so excited that it's finally getting some traction. I see it all as divine timing. When I first was chomping at the bit to get Frankenskies, the first one out, 2015, 2016, come 2016, I was like, why is everything getting in my way? Lord help me. But it was divine timing to delay the release of Frankenskies 1 because I was able to include the normalization of geoengineering. Geoengineering was a crackpot crazy conspiracy word. Like nobody in the mainstream was saying this word. And then all of a sudden, at the end of 2016, when I already wanted this movie to be out, the Meteorological Association comes out with 12 new clouds, which are all variations of chemtrails. And they start selling this idea through the media across the board, every single media outlet. We have a solution to your problem, and it's called geoengineering. But what was staggering is first they did a slander campaign. So first, every single media outlet across the world came out and said, if you think chemtrails are real, you're a conspiracy nut job. And they showed pictures of chemtrails and said, if you think this is chemtrails, you're crazy. Even my grandmother hit me up and was like, these aren't real, Matt. And I'm like, oh, dear Lord. So then they planted that propaganda, conditioned the world.
So that's Project Mockingbird, by the way.
Oh,
right?
yeah,
Yes.
Big time. Then just a couple months later, when everyone's scratching their heads, wondering what's going on in the sky, they must be crazy because they just got gaslit by the entire media programming industry. Then all of a sudden, after they've primed everyone, all the media conglomerates came out then next with, we have a solution, it's geoengineering. They showed the same pictures of chemtrails that they did 2 months prior and said, this is what we can do to save you from your problems. And everyone bought it. And so I was able to make fun of that and include that in the documentary because it was a really pivotal piece as the normalization campaign erupted. So Frankenskies 2, I'd like it to come out end of next year. I've got a lot of interviews lined up and I'm already getting a lot of amazing people coming together, but it's all in God's hands. Like I just have surrendered to the universe because I would have loved this movie to be out last week. You know what I mean? And to be able to press this and go on new shows and tell everyone the new facts that I've learned. But really, there's so many different people of different walks of life that I'd like to interview, and everyone's waking up on their own time, and people are coming to me now more than ever. And so I've got firefighters that I'm interviewing. I'm going to South Dakota to interview a soil scientist who created an enzyme that eats aluminum out of soil. He's fixing soil. Amazing. I've got arborists that I'm interviewing. I just interviewed the naturopath, Dr. Carl Felt. Amazing, because I want it to be inspiring. I don't want to just put people in a dark place. The first movie, Frankenskies, is very uplifting. Like you get to the end of it and you're like, wow, we can do something about this. It's not doom and gloom and put you in a place of fear, because that's where the powers that be want you, is in fear so you can be controlled, right? I try to put people in a higher vibration of basically love, where they feel like that they're inspired and can do something about this, one person at a time, whatever it may be, but not putting people in this, lower frequency. So the next movie, with all these beautiful people and amazing interviews that I have lined up, it should be released next year, and I'm looking forward to it. And I've already got Frankenskies2.com up and ready, so check it out for updates. Frankenskies2.com. Check out that website for updates. And there's different pivotal pieces that I'm including in there, like how to chelate and take control of the toxicity in your body and to remove these toxins, how to know what's in your body, how to be active, and also a lot about these fires. It's all interconnected, but the fires, which we could definitely talk about, including the smart meters and how they're related, but the fires are really rearing their ugly head and being used as a tool to push this global new world order. And in the West, we're really experiencing it. But around the world, they get hit with these headlines that these fires are horrible and something needs to be done, right? Well, how about seeding some clouds? How about making rain over these fires? Oh, that's technology that we really don't have quite yet. Dubai can make it rain, but we don't really know. It's like, come on, we do know, you know? But they light these fires with precipitating lightning or arsons or whatever way these fires get started. And instead of putting them out with the tech that they have, they literally engineer wind storms on top of these fires and exacerbate these conditions just to get their headlines and push people out of certain areas, all part of the Agenda 2030, if anybody knows about that.
How about beforehand dropping chems or metals or whatever that help the fire grow faster? Do they do that type of stuff too?
I forgot to mention that, and that's a really important piece of the puzzle. So the chemtrail constituents, which, you know, we have to take science into our own hand, but once you match the rainwater analyses over and over and over, like people have done this repeatedly. This isn't just like a one-time shot. You match the rainwater analysis to the hair samples, to the patents, to their ideas of we're going to do this in the future. Like I said, Bill Gates and David Keith, who's this Harvard professor, he's the puppet that Bill Gates is the, quote, sugar daddy of geoengineering. The media has said that. But he has this puppet, David Keith, who's this Harvard professor, and he even says aluminum is the best route. We're going to spray nanoparticulate aluminum. We haven't done it quite yet, but it's our savior. It's like when they already are telling you they're going to do something, usually they've been already doing it. That's just how they play, the government. So the primary chemtrail constituents are aluminum, barium, and strontium. Well, the aluminum that's being sprayed, aluminum oxide, and the barium that's being sprayed, barium salts, those two primary constituents are patented fire accelerants. So yes, fire accelerants are being sprayed on the trees, but not only that, the aluminum, it wreaks havoc on these trees. The aluminum gets in the soil, makes the soil super alkaline, and breaks down all the different protective measures in the soil, like microbes and all this stuff that help with the nutrient uptake of the trees. The alkalinity of the soil of the aluminum is a huge issue. Once the aluminum oxide is uptaken into the tree, it prevents the trees from being able to uptake water. So it makes them look drought-stricken, but they're not drought-stricken. They're dying from the aluminum oxide that's embedded in them. Also, I've just recently learned, and this is a neat little piece of the puzzle that I'm not 100% on, but these rabbit holes, you know, as you go down and you get in these different interviews and meet these different people, and I'm always an open book, willing to learn more. The way that you make thermite is aluminum oxide and iron oxide. Well, iron oxide is actually just iron that's decomposing and rusting, and it's all throughout the environment, evidently. So the aluminum oxide, it bonds with the iron oxide and makes a variation of thermite inside these trees. If you don't know about thermite, 9/11, etc., right? Another story. But these explosives that are used to take down buildings are being essentially put in these trees, and we're dealing with situations where when these fires get going, they're burning way hotter and way faster. And then also, lastly, when you wreck the immune system of these trees through these different chemicals being sprayed, which is all by design, very meticulously researched and impacting the bees and the humans with dementia and Alzheimer's. We can get into that. These trees, immune systems are so broken down that the beetles come in and take over. I mean, why were the beetles not taking over before? It's like, oh no, global warming's letting the beetles come run rampant. It's like, no, the trees are their immune systems are breaking down. They're becoming more fire prone, and then their fire situation is more easily played out with all those variables.
I want to switch over to talk about EMF a bit. But first, right before that, we did talk a little bit about censorship and media. What have you personally gone through? You know, you mentioned not saying certain words or things like that, but what have you gone through as far as censorship goes, or even losing? You mentioned, I think before we started, losing some audiences on some platforms. What have you had happen?
Yes, and what a journey that it's been as an activist. And you just have to learn how to play your part, even with these low blows, right? But I do sincerely think that it's all in divine order. So the more that I'm pushed online, the more that I'm like, all right, well, I'll just do it in person. And in person, it's so much more valuable. Your vibe attracts your tribe. You find the people. And like last night when I did the screening in Boise or Meridian, people were asking, how can we form a local group? What can we do? What can we do to get the ball rolling while you're gone, Matt? And it's just beautiful, these people coming together and sharing ideas. And even someone was there that works for Idaho Power, and his boss does the cloud seeding programs. And the awareness that was brought by bringing these people together is invaluable. It's priceless. So online, I had a total kick-ass YouTube channel. I was so proud of my YouTube channel. I had done so many different things, and was so proud of upwards to 1,000 videos that I had on there. And I had a large following. I had my movie Frankenskies on there, that's where it was first born, is on YouTube, and then Vimeo as well. But it had all the views. It had all the thousands of comments, and that's valuable. When you're new and you're coming to something and you're scratching your head, but then you see all these comments and they're all raving about how important this is and their personal stories, their personal accounts and everything. People are bound to the groupthink psychology, and it's when you come across something that has 100 views versus 10 million, you look at it differently, and that's just the world that we live in. People, we're ingrained through the pressures of peers, and I mean, you name it, people want to fit in. It's just the way that we're programmed. And when everyone else is thinking one way, it's like, oh, I could grasp that. But if you're an outlier and you're alone and there's only 10 other people on board with you, it's like, maybe I'm just crazy, right? So the YouTube channel was already that was during COVID, and it was such a kick in the face because you get 3 strikes on YouTube. My strikes came from YouTube videos that I found on other people's channels that were already up on YouTube, but for some reason, me putting them up was a problem. The first strike that I got was I thought it was just completely obvious. Somebody had a mask on. If anybody remembers, people were made to wear masks. Imagine that. So someone had a mask on, and they had this high-tech CO2 meter. So we exhale CO2 every time we breathe. We breathe in oxygen, exhale CO2. The trees do the opposite, so they're beautiful. And if anybody cares about global warming, they should be talking about planting trees. Like, come on. Like, if this is really real, let's plant some trees. Where's the tree planting campaign? We should be planting trees daily if we really care, instead of dimming our sun with metal. It's insanity. So I won't go through all my strikes, but this was the very beginning of the YouTube insanity. There was a video that I found on YouTube that I was like, oh, I'll just download this and share it on my platform because it's important. This gentleman who said he had a medical background, he puts on a mask and he puts the little CO2 meter in there, and he starts breathing. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. As he's breathing less oxygen, more CO2, because the CO2 meter's in there showing how much CO2 is in his little mask area that he's inhaling. Not to mention the bacteria and all the other ignorant things that come with the mask. I mean, they don't even do anything. So for, supposed viruses and all this sort of stuff. But that video, I got my first strike for medical misinformation. And I'm like, whoa, how is that misinformation? It's very fact-based. I was just sharing someone else's video, and I go to their platform, and there it is still. It's like, how is it even possible? So I lost my YouTube channel during COVID, and that was...
Do you remember how many subscribers or...
How many subscribers did I have? Not 1 million, but up to that. I was like excited to hopefully get to, that kind of point. Off the top of my head, I do not recall. But the movie Frankenskies, like when I first put it out there, it had 100,000 views within days. And then it started getting, stuck there and what have you. And, I had to really work for more and more views. You have to try harder as the algorithm kicks in. But definitely that was the main place where the movie lived, right? And then everyone else who shared the movie or had it on their platforms, all of a sudden it's just this black YouTube, does not exist anymore, which was sad. So I lost that. And at the time I was devastated, but I was like, okay, I'm not alone. Other people are losing their channels, right? Well, then I started investing in and I was like, I'm never doing YouTube again, then goodbye. So I started investing my time in everything else. BitChute, Rumble, you name it. And I got a nice traction on TikTok and Instagram. The Instagram page just started blowing up because I didn't care. I was really putting it out there. And I thought that my memes were good and not going to be censored to that degree. And I'll tell the TikTok story, which is just amazing first. So the TikTok, I started getting lots and lots of followers, tens of thousands, not up to 100,000, but I was growing very rapidly. And what was beautiful is, at first I was like, I'm not going on TikTok, that's lame. But I was like, okay, I got to try everything. So I go onto TikTok, and before I had even made an account, I get on there, and I hadn't been on there. So other people were doing this, and I try to type in hashtag chemtrails. Doesn't exist. They wouldn't let you hashtag chemtrails. So I'm like, oh, geez. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to hashtag Frankenskies. And no, I've got screenshots of this. So like I have valid proof. Frankenskies had 300,000 hashtags. Frankenskies, the movie, had 200,000 hashtags. I mean, plus 300,000 plus and 200,000 plus. So I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, people have been hashtagging my movie and plugging it. I mean, hashtagging my movie on their like chemtrail posts. Like, look at this sky, hashtag Frankenskies, right? So I was like, I'm going to get on board and start doing this too. I started putting up just videos of grid pattern skies, you know. I wasn't like, this is the government. I was like, check out this skies. And these videos just started getting pulled. And then my YouTube account, my TikTok account's gone. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to give that any energy. So recently I go back on TikTok because I have a business, and I'm like, okay, maybe I'll have a business page on TikTok or whatever. And I go to put in hashtag Frankenskies and hashtag Frankenskies the movie. Frankenskies has 15 hashtags, and Frankenskies the movie has 10 hashtags. So it was, and if anybody doesn't know what a hashtag is, you got to just figure it out yourself. Sorry. It's just the whole thing. It's a pound sign, and then people have ways to connect to these different words through the internet. And what I realized is TikTok completely revamped their things, and EMF radiation had millions of hashtags, and now it's like hundreds. So they cherry picked different topics and pulled all the hashtags. And I believe that maybe TikTok was bought by a different company in the West, or whatever really happened to be able to be in the United States. I think the Congress or whatever is like, okay, well, if you're going to be over here, you got to play ball, or we're going to ban you from our country. So they gave them what they're going to do and who they're going to restrict. On actual activists' Instagram, I was rolling on there, and then I had all these different chemtrail folks on because I befriended all the different, New Jersey Skywatch and Chico Against Chemtrails, and all these different groups that were chemtrailers, anti-chemtrailers. And when I went to Scotland and gave a speech at the first anti-geoengineering rally this year, I posted my video, my presentation from Scotland, and I had gotten up to 35,000 followers on Instagram, which was great. That was a lot for me, and I'd built it up, and it was a big influence. I would share things, and all sorts of people grab it and reshare it, and I felt like I was doing great. One day, all of a sudden, my Instagram account is gone because they said I was spamming people. So I was sending my chemtrail video to about a dozen other people that were obviously chemtrail people, and then I just get this email: "You're a spammer, and goodbye. you have no channel anymore." Oh, I must mention that when I lost my YouTube channel, it said, if you want to. In the email that I got when I lost it, it said, if you would like to debate,
Appeal,
if you would like to appeal this, click this link. So I clicked the link to appeal, and it says, you can't appeal anything. You don't have an account here. So I was like, oh, thanks a lot, guys. So the censorship is very real. So I've started to not pull back, but choose my words wisely. So I went back on my Facebook account, and even went back on my timeline, and you can type in like Matt Landman vaccines, and I got my vaccine rants and just deleted them. I just went back and deleted things that I thought that I might get retroactively in trouble for. And so I play my part on Facebook, and I do my absolute best, but I do watch certain important little keywords that could get me in a lot of trouble. And it's still alive over there. So please follow me on Facebook, Matt Landman, where I'm very proud to have a page. And, I think that the players that be behind Facebook, they know that they eat a lot of my time. They know that I'm on the computer posting the crap out of things, and that they're in control of who sees what. Put me in my echo chamber and keep me thinking that I'm reaching certain audiences, and they're in control there with like who I reach. So if you're listening, Facebook, if you delete my Facebook, I'm going to just be out in the world having protests and hosting rallies and really doing what you don't want. So let that page stay and keep me under wraps and controlled in your own little design. And I'll be on the computer a lot more than I should be. So you're welcome.
All right, so you lost YouTube, you lost Instagram, you lost TikTok completely, all those. Are you on X?
For some reason, I was getting a lot of censorship over there, so I kind of just gave up. I wasn't getting any traction.
What period of time was that? A few years back, before Elon?
Yeah, I had a page on X, and then when Elon came on board and was talking about I'm not going to censor, I was like, oh, great. But then nothing was being seen over there. So I just kind of gave up. Like, I usually am pretty good at knowing what'll be, get traction and what have you. But I think I had some shadow ban over there, or maybe I just didn't give it enough energy. So I just let it go. But I do have a BitChute account, Matt Landman. And there were other platforms like Odyssey and Rumble that Rumble wouldn't let me on. So that was the thing. They asked me, who are you and what do you do? And I was, I'm Matt Landman. I do this, this, this. Silence. They wouldn't let me do it, which I felt was really weird because they're supposed to be whatever. There's everybody is different strokes for different folks, but I do have a BitChute and I do post on Odyssey and I do have the Facebook and I do what I can, but it is a weird world out there and it's important for people to realize what we're dealing with.
Truly amazing. The amount of censorship that's going on is like mind blowing. I've had the similar challenges with some things I'm doing. And then other things that are interesting are when you remember researching and watching a video and you even remember the title of the video and all that stuff. And then you go back a year later, like, oh, I want to watch that video again. And it's just completely gone. And not only that, but then these other videos that are propped up when you search for that video, they're propped up that are basically these debunking videos of the original video that you want to see, which is no longer there, but only these debunking videos are there now, which makes the first trying to make people look like idiots who were remotely involved with the first video, but they've erased it. It's depressing sometimes. So we, as I think, society of people who are eager to find truth and share truth, we have to work around these things, knowing that ultimately there's a few people in control of the distribution of this information that good people are creating. And that's where it's like, keep attracting people to your own webpage, to your places that you have some control of. Let's see. So EMF, electromagnetic frequencies, for the new person who hasn't ever really heard much about this, you do deal with it on a daily basis at pretty much at all times. And it's the extent to which you're exposed is going to affect you and your body and your brain and everything else. But I had been reading a little bit and I saw that, you were just getting ready to finalize, the production of Frankenskies 1 and living in an area, I think, was it in Canada or something? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so after a while of being in a certain house or residence and sleeping there, you were realizing there's problems and losing sleep and having some issues and sensitivities and even like an electro feeling in your fingers and things like that. And then you trying to figure this out as you're focusing on, finishing up your movie and have a conversation and somebody mentions it could be was it new smart meter or something like that? Tell me a little bit about that and then what happened as a result.
Yeah, my landlord was jokingly like, oh, it could be the smart meter. And I was like, what? Because I'd heard the term smart meter, just like I'd heard the term 5G, but I hadn't dove deep into it because I've got other things on my plate. But here I was. So I was living in Roberts Creek, which is this like island community on the Sunshine Coast outside of Vancouver, Canada. Beautiful, beautiful place. So in this cabin, my bedroom is about 3 feet from my bed, the smart meter on the other side of the wall. I had no idea. I had no idea they were even toxic at the time. And I was working on the movie, working from home, on the movie, and then sleeping there. So
smart meter for what?
The house.
Like for a meter for electricity?
Oh, yeah. So for people that don't know, there's a meter on your home that measures the electricity. And usually it would be what's called an analog meter, where it's this little spinning wheel. And then once a month, the meter maid comes and gets the reading and then gets you a power bill, right? That's how it was. So to supposedly not have too much personnel and to make things more efficient, but really it's to have constant tracking and all these other things, the smart meters were digitized And instead of having people come and read it, they send wireless signals off to the station. Different smart meters, every smart meter is different. There's all these different models, and there's different ways that they interact with one another. But the ones in California that I studied and the ones in Canada that I studied, they're emitting a radio frequency that sends a signal very far to try to get to the station, which could be like 30 miles away. So they're sending a very strong radio frequency signal to tell the power company what you're doing every like 5 seconds. Like every 5 seconds, there's a strong pulse. So, and then they get your power update every 5 seconds to know what you're doing. If you turn on a light or whatever, you're using your blender or whatever. So, and then each month they can give you a bill. And so it's important for people to understand their options. You can call your power company and ask them, what are my options? Can I get the smart meter put on a post further away from my house? Can I get an old analog meter? Some places you can opt out and get those analog meters for a couple extra bucks a month or whatever it may be. Every power company has different rules and regulations, and it's sad that a lot of people are monopolized where you only have one power company. I've noticed some municipalities, especially in the UK, there's a lot of different power companies to choose from. And so with competition, they have different options. And so if one power company doesn't want to play ball, you can go with the other power company and get the old meter. That's a whole thing. So as I became electrically sensitive and I was having heart palpitations, I couldn't sleep at night. I had a BlackBerry phone at the time, and it was literally shocking my hand when I held it. I started telling my friends, I think I'm under electronic attack or something, I don't know what's going on. But even when I was laying in bed, I could hear and feel this like this pulsing of energy. I had no idea. I figured I was being attacked by a satellite or something, whatever it was, right? But then my landlord jokingly was like, well, they did put this new smart meter on there. And I go around, I look at it, and I started sleeping further away from it, and the rabbit hole continues, right? Well, as I recovered from my EMF sensitivity and ditched my smartphone and don't have one anymore and have wired internet, and I got this cheap little flip phone, track phone. It's like $20 for 3 months, and I just stick it in my glove compartment in case I really need it if I'm in an accident or something. I got AAA. I'm not totally, ignorant. Like, you have to weigh out your options. You can't be a total Luddite or whatever. Like, it's important to learn your options and to mitigate with in the realm of logic, right? So when I started to learn about the hazards of EMF radiation and smart meters, and people are talking about 5G and 5G infrastructure being deployed and all that, I have a very wide range network of different types of people. And this Mormon couple in Utah wanted me to come out and screen my movie. And I went out there, and it was the craziest experience. Utah is a wild place. And this particular family, they had about 10 kids, and they all spoke this gibberish language that they had created. Upwards to 15 years old, they were speaking gibberish. And they had this one child that was 16, and she would translate for me. Very interesting. But in this experience, they had sewn and fashioned themselves copper clothing, which I didn't know EMF protection clothing and cloth and fabric even existed. And so I dove into this space, and I realized if something can be done to protect people, I want to be in on it and help the people. I never knew I was going to be creating a whole clothing line, but I went to Asia and tried to figure it out, and come to find out it's only China, Korea, and Japan that has the technology to make this silver or steel or copper fabric. The copper ends up not being washable, and it's too conductive. It builds up dirty electricity. You shouldn't really be wearing it at all. So I learned that silver is the way to go. And I started diving in there and making silver blackout Faraday bags where you won't get any cell phone signal inside, and then made men's underwear and maternity aprons and all sorts of things to create a shielding to deflect the EMF radiation that surrounds us from Wi-Fi, cell towers, cell phones, Bluetooth, all these sort of things. In minimal, what's the word? Getting small doses of it isn't the end of the world, but it does accumulate. It's a bioaccumulation. EMF bioaccumulates in the body until we do see issues, whether we're lethargic or have a brain tumor, whatever it may be. We want to avoid that by mitigating our exposure and through knowledge and education and awareness, and living happy, healthy lives by embracing the truth. So the creation of Sparrow was meant to just be able to offer people the education, awareness, and protection. I never knew that it was going to take off. Come COVID, I only had a couple products. Oh, I have to tell my story of my phone bags, so we'll get to that. But come COVID, I thought the company was just going to be tinkering along and that I'd have other mainstream jobs of income. But when COVID reared its ugly head, people started contacting me. Matt, are you going to make shirts? Matt, when are you going to come out with hoodies? I need to protect my whole body because 5G is here. And there was a whole awakening of how 5G might be actually making people sick and what have you. And so the company really took off during COVID, and that was all a blessing for me. So it was an interesting situation where most people were losing their livelihoods. I was actually able to step into my path or my destiny and stop working for the man and putting my energy into activism in the EMF realm. Chemtrails wasn't going to pay the bills, and I always wanted activism to take off in another space so that I could do so. And the Silver Clothing has done just that. And so I'm really proud of what it's become and where it's heading. And there's other EMF protection companies out there in the world, about a dozen, and I'm really excited to be a part of them. And I say a rising tide lifts all ships. Like, the awareness will be there as these different companies come into the market. And I'm happy for constructive competition because I know that I can shine and bring the comfort, protection, usability, style, affordability, all these things, all these marks that I'm trying to hit. I see myself as the leader in the industry, and I'll stay there, and I'm very proud of it, and I hope people can check it out. I've got a great blog on there talking about different radiation off of each phone, Bluetooth headphones, how they're toxic, smart meters, what have you, what EMF meter you should get and why, so you can understand the environment that you're living in. Some people don't even know that their alarm clock is actually every second checking the weather, and it's right next to your bed, and it's connected to the Wi-Fi router, and that's why you're not getting good sleep. You know, there's certain little things that you wouldn't really realize until you get the meter and you're like, oh, wow, that's right. This Xbox is looking for a signal even when it's off. Why is it in my bedroom? So these things can disrupt sleep patterns and cause depression, all sorts of things. And so mitigation and understanding this is very important.
Yeah, I think we could talk for hours and hours and hours about any of these topics and so many more. I have let's do we'll call it like a speed round almost. Okay, so let's hit up AirPods. This is something I've seen a bit about, and I warned my teens about it. I will not purchase them AirPods as a result of what I've read. And I use the wired ones. Hopefully those are somewhat better than the wireless ones. But what do you know about AirPods and how dangerous those are, compared to other ways of listening to music?
Yeah, the wired headphones are great. I highly recommend them. The wireless AirPods, they're totally predatory, and the biggest issue that I have with them is they send signals back and forth to each other through your brain. They're communicating with each other through your skull, and that alone is going to lead to potential brain tumors and what have you. John McCain held his phone to his right ear, and he got a tumor there, and he's like, that's right where I hold my phone. Obviously, that's where my phone was. I got a brain tumor from my phone. He got the tumor removed, and he ended up with another tumor in the same spot and died. John McCain, politician. So it's important for people to grasp how toxic these things are, and the radiation levels that they put off are extremely hazardous. If you get a reader, you'll see how high in radiation they are. And I was just at the Carl Felt Center in Idaho and talking to them about it, and people have come in with thyroid issues, tumors in their thyroid as well, and they are full-time headphone wireless earbud users, and they're like, oh, I think it must be that, and it is, and it's this big elephant in the room, but people think it look cool. People are excited to wear these little things in their head, but if it even had a 5% chance that it was going to kill you, would you want to look cool or just have some wires coming out of your ears? Like, come on. And I think the percentage is there, but it's not just that it's going to maybe kill you. It's depleting your dopamine. It's messing with your circadian rhythm. It's messing with your sleep cycle. It's doing a lot of different things. Okay, for instance, EMF fields break down your blood-brain barrier, which is the protection between your blood and the toxic environment in your brain. And so the naval research studies I know you said that we're going to speed this up, but I'll make it really quick. Naval research studies were injecting ink into rats' brains and then exposing them to EMF fields, and showed that the brain would then leak and the ink would go all throughout their body. So if you're putting these earbuds on and your blood-brain barrier, which is the protection to your brain, is being broken down and porous, and then you're in your toxic environment with maybe aluminum, chemtrails, or whatever it may be in your blood system that shouldn't be going straight to your brain, fluoride, what have you, is bypassing the blood-brain barrier because of the leakage that's being caused by the EMF fields. And the more you wear those headphones, the more porous your blood-brain barrier becomes, and the more subject you are to the toxins.
All right, next is light bulbs. So my wife says she's allergic to certain light bulbs. I don't know what, she just says she has this reaction. What are your thoughts? What have you found? What are the healthiest types of light bulbs to have?
So we have a circadian rhythm, and it's dictated by light. So we absorb light through our skin all day long, and our bodies know exactly what time of day it is. And based on the time of day, we are emitting dopamine or serotonin, melatonin, dopamine precursors, all these things. Our bodies know the exact time of day based on the light cycle, right? And people absorb light. Our entire endocrine hormonal system is based on light absorption. So I firmly do believe that your wife is sensitive or allergic to different lights because we're absorbing them, and some people are more sensitive than others. So LED lights are toxic. It stands for light emitting diode, and it emits a lot of blue light, which blue light is near ultraviolet light on the color spectrum, and our bodies are confused and our bodies think that we're in bright sunlight when we're around LED. LED lights flicker on and off at different rates per second, but upwards to thousands of flickers on and off per second. And that's why different LED bulbs flicker at different rates, but they're flickering on and off. And that's why they're supposedly energy efficient, because they're off half the time. Same with compact fluorescents, these CFL twirly bulbs. They're flickering on and off, and they're off half the time. And that's why they're claiming to be energy efficient. It takes a lot of energy to flicker them on and off as well. So like, mind you that. But we're being put into like a trance, and it's disrupting our whole circadian absorption. Our hormones are being impacted by these flickering lights. They're flickering on and off like 1,000 times in a second, and it's impacting us. But we can't even see it because our eyes only see it like 30 frames per second. We can't even acknowledge this high speed flicker rate. So the compact fluorescent twirly bulbs, they have mercury in them. So if they break, you better leave your house and put on a hazmat suit and not come back for hours. So that's a whole thing that people need to recognize. The LED light bulbs are also toxic. Those two are by far the worst. I'm going to start carrying incandescent bulbs, 60, 80, and 100 watts on my website because they're so hard to get nowadays. Some states, you can't even find them. Some, they're readily available. People think that Joe Biden banned them and they're outlawed and they're illegal. They're not illegal. No one knows that you have them. No one's going to come in your house and cite you for having them. And even if they knew you had them, there's no real laws against it. But Biden said, oh, we're doing this green economy and what have you. I remember over a decade ago during the Obama administration, whenever that was, people came door to door in my neighborhood and with those twirly bulbs and said, you're welcome. We're going to take your incandescents and we're going to give you these free bulbs, energy efficient, save you on your power bill. They're toxic and they're predatory, and people need to realize that. And while you're at it, your screens flicker, your phones flicker. They have blue light emitting, your laptops, your TVs, and all these things to understand your circadian rhythm. And at night, there's blue light filters you can put on and blue light blocking glasses and what have you. But understanding blue light is very important when owning your health.
1 minute, teen depression and tech.
So teen depression is like a whole thing that's coming up, and it's staggering because these parents are being bad parents. They're handing their kids a tablet. They're getting addicted to this stuff, and they don't realize why. And teen depression is through the roof. So EMF radiation, as well as the flicker rate, as well as the blue light, it all impacts hormones. And basically, the tech is making your body think you're around bright sunlight. So every time you're around your devices, your body is like, oh, it's noon, it's noon, it's noon, it's noon. So you can't get to the evening on your circadian biological clock And in the nighttime is when these different things like cortisol and dopamine and things are released. So the more that these kids are on their tech, the more that they're not getting these opportunities for their bodies to create these different hormones, these happy juices. And then lo and behold, all of a sudden they got no serotonin, dopamine, and they don't know why, and they're depressed, and it's the tech in their pockets.
How important would you say it is? Is this a good idea for everybody just to turn their Wi-Fi off every night?
Well, that's an excellent idea, and you can get a timer and put it on a timer at 1 a.m. My Wi-Fi is going to turn off, and at 6 a.m. it's going to pop back on or whatever, and then you can get a better night's sleep. If you get yourself an EMF meter, you can find out how bad it is in your sleeping environment, and maybe you don't want to sleep next to your smart meter or whatever it may be. I like wired internet, but that's not convenient for everybody. But there are adapters where you can have the wired internet going through all the phone outlets in your house as well. There's a lot of different options that people don't grasp, but every little mitigation is important. So you can put your phone on airplane mode. You can put timers on. There's different things that you can do, and baby steps towards making a safer environment in your home. And also, EMF radiation, it agitates and makes mold grow like crazy. So people with black mold issues, they don't know why or whatever, it's influenced by EMF fields. And there's all this research showing that mold toxicity goes through the roof when exposed to too much EMF.
All right. How about grounding?
Grounding is really important, and people don't grasp it. I've actually started carrying grounding mats, grounding pillowcases, grounding sheets at my company. And the grounding equipment, like the sheets and the grounding mats, they're plugged into the outlet. On the outlet, you have a plus, a minus, and then a little circle in the bottom. That's the ground. And if properly wired, the little circle plug in your outlets, it goes to a copper spike outside, literally hammered into the ground, so that if there's a surge in your wiring electricity, it should go out to the ground. The best way to ground is to go put your feet or your hands in some soil, but it can't be super dry. It's got to be able to conduct electricity. So if it's a little moist or anything that can conduct electricity is best. But literally sitting next to a tree, you can diffuse the dirty energy that we're surrounded by. So we're surrounded by our phones, our outlets, our power lines, all these things, and our bodies, because we're built on electricity, like all the way down to the synapses in our brain, our cells, and how our body communicates with our gut and everything. It's all electricity. Like, we're beings of rhythm and electricity. Try not to sleep for a few days and then deny to me that we're not beings of frequency and vibration and rhythm, right? So the electricity is really important, especially when we're wearing rubber shoes and it's just bouncing around in our bodies. Like, it can build up to the point that it's basically frying our nervous system, and all it wants to do, the electricity just wants to get out of us and get into the ground. So you dip your feet in a lake or the ocean or just dirt or whatever, and then all of a sudden the surging electricity that's in our body is gone. I've got an electrovolt meter where I can actually test the dirty electricity that's in my body, and I've done tests outside on power lines or what have you, and literally you've got this number of electricity, of volts of dirty electricity going through your body, trying to get out through the rubber soles and then bouncing through your body and bouncing through your body. All you do is touch the ground, it goes to zero. It's very obvious. And then what happens is we get tuned to the Schumann resonance of the Earth. The Earth has a resonance which is 7.8 hertz, 7.8 beats per second. It's like the frequency is 8 cycles per second, basically. And then we're surrounded by things that are like 1,000 cycles per second, and we're getting totally overfried. And our body wants to tune to the rhythm of the Earth. We have a frequency that our hearts emit and our brains emit, all these frequencies. And really, we just want to be calibrated to the Earth. And that's why it's so appealing to be in nature and what have you.
Yeah, one of the things I'm thankful for is to be on a well, and our water comes from the earth and not, messed with by any government agency. In Eagle's just a small little town, and we had a international water company purchase our local water company. Veolia purchased it, and you start to wonder, like, why do they have an interest in purchasing a little small town water company? But there's a distribution method that you can distribute things through water, obviously. And one of the things that's in most of the water that we have to most of the people in our country is fluoride. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, fluoride is toxic, and people don't really know because, well, Edward Bernays, He was a propagandist and hired by all these different institutions to normalize and trick people into thinking certain ways. Edward Bernays was Sigmund Freud's nephew, and he created these certain terms like trust the specialist, and the American breakfast will be, bacon, and smoke tobacco, it's sexy, and fluoridate your water, it's good for your teeth. It's never been proven safe or effective. There's no efficacy proven ever that fluoride actually strengthens your teeth. And when you drink it, it goes right into your stomach and wreaks havoc on your gut, and it's toxic. People don't realize that aluminum, when you smelt it, like Alcoa and different aluminum production conglomerates, when they melt and make aluminum, fluoride melts off of aluminum. It's a byproduct of the aluminum making industry, and it's toxic waste product that was always put in bladders and buried underground and hidden because they didn't know what to do with it. Then through Edward Bernays and the evil programming, which this goes back to another word that I never say, the Nazis, where they were like putting it in the water in concentration camps to pacify people. And even Mussolini said that a population fluoridated needs only 10% of the normal troops to manage them because they all become pacified. But it wreaks havoc on your entire system, including your brain and your pineal gland. But what's the worst part about it, which this, like if you've got fluoride in your toothpaste, get rid of it, But when it's in the drinking water, there's things that we can do, right? We can, there's ordinances, and you can go and get it on the ballot and maybe get it removed. And this is local activism, and it can be done. It has been done, and it still will be done. It's very expensive to the city to host it. You have to have a hazmat suit. It's corrosive. You have to take care of it and host these things. In Redding, California, they removed it from the drinking water supply only based on the money because it was just too expensive for them to do. And no one's teeth are falling out in Redding after that. So, and I'm almost done. So when you get it in your system, it's nano level, and it bypasses the blood-brain barrier, goes into your brain, and it builds up in your brain. And so then if you get aluminum in your system, aluminum in your food, aluminum in your deodorant, like if you got aluminum deodorant, get rid of that. Like your armpits are a detox mechanism where you sweat. You don't want to clog your pores with an aluminum toxin. Get aluminum in your bloodstream. That's not ideal. Aluminum in the vaccines, aluminum in the chemtrails. So when you end up with aluminum in your body, it usually wouldn't be able to bypass the blood-brain barrier and get into your brain, but the fluoride pulls it into the brain because it wants to couple with its friend that it used to be melted to when it was originally mined. And so the fluoride and aluminum in your brain cause chemical little reactions, like little explosions in your brain, causing dementia, Alzheimer's. And now Alzheimer's is the #1 cause of death in the United Kingdom, which is just incredible, which comes from aluminum toxicity in the brain.
Yeah, so whether it is, that subject with fluoride, EMF through Wi-Fi phones, the AirPods, the light bulbs, the cloud seeding, the chemtrails, the food, stuff that's in our food, which we didn't even get into any of that, all meant to kind of control and to it seemingly make us live a life that's maybe 50 to 60% of what our potential life could be if we had all the healthy versions of everything. The healthy versions of everything, when I think about this, is the way that God intended things to be. And when you have an adversary, Satan being the adversary, and God the Father is the creator, the adversary wants to pervert and destroy and destruct and poison anything that God creates that is good. So he'll try to take that creation, influence humans, and have those humans be involved with collectively making all those things that were intended to be something good and make them something evil and bad that can further be used to control people, and keep them really away from enjoying the creation that they've been given, enjoying the creator that's given them that creation. These are, my theories about the really big picture about why all this stuff is happening. Because you just keep going up, and the further you go up, from what I can tell, the more evil and the more demonic and the more satanic all of this horrific things are coming from. And it's really this push for this one global system of control over everybody. And, as I look at that, it's kind of depressing, and so, there is a wonderful solution for it that I have. But, before I'll express that in a minute. But for somebody like that, you would hear, or that would hear you and hear other people, and they're just getting into this, and all of this, red pill stuff is coming at them,
Mhm.
and they're a little bit late to the game, and they're hearing all this, and there's a lot to take in, and it can get depressing to hear about all this evil that's going on. What do you tell them?
This is exactly what I tell them. And speaking to what you said about living to our true potential. So, yes, our way of life is under attack. Our food, our air, our water, even the clothes that we wear are being infiltrated with polyester. I mean, they're trying to inject our babies with poison and tell them that they can be barn animals or identify as barn animals. I mean, the psychological warfare alone. So, all these things, they're pulling out all the stops to quell our potential. But why? It's because they're terrified of us. They're absolutely terrified of us coming into our truest potential and having our spirit and alignment with Holy Spirit and our connection to Source. And then in that, we're in God's image and we are like creator beings and we're unstoppable, we're unfoolable. And when we're aligned with truth, there's nothing that can be done. So they get us believing lies. And I believe the lies are a backstop mechanism, because if we're in resonance with lies, we can't live to our fullest potential, because that's not how we were designed. Like, God wouldn't make us resonating with lies, but then be able to be, creators or what have you. Like, in our resonance of truth is where the true power lies. But believe me, it is out of their fear why they do everything that they do. And let that empower you all, the listeners, because our truest potential is unfathomable, and we're approaching that day where we win this battle. But first, we have to recognize that they're terrified of our true potential.
Yeah, and the reality is we don't know where we are in the history of time and God's design, and God can see like the end of the parade and the beginning of the parade at the same time. He's up above, and we're only just watching the parade go by where we are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of a metaphor that just is like, we're just trying to figure things out. But I think there's, a lot of lies and a lot of deception that try to stop people from standing up and saying, no, enough is enough. We need to look into this and that and stop believing this media and that media, and exposing evil where it is. And one of the things I think that's been, I think a clever deception that Satan has done is to get the people who are the biggest believers of the Creator and His creation to essentially do nothing. And that is one of those things, is to have people constantly be thinking that the end is nigh. So if I believe that the end is tomorrow or the next day, I'm not going to plant a tree today because it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But it's such a wonderful, if you think about, if Satan wants to take out all those people from doing anything effective against him and all of his deceptions that he's doing, he would have them believe that there's no point of standing up to do anything today because it's all going to be over tomorrow. And that deception has been, you can look back at the last 50, 60, 70 years that we're very aware of and what the church has done. Things that are before that get kind of foggy, but at least what we're very aware of that the church has done in the last several decades is kind of push that messaging that the end is near. And it takes people out of the battle. It takes them out of engaging and doing something. And like just looking at the voting results for people in the church, is horrific. The people that just don't even show up to vote. And that's kind of like the minimal thing that you can do as helping society, is getting the right people in place to pass the right laws, to legislate the right things so that we don't have planes flying over us and dropping poison on us. But so it's that deception. And, I don't know, is the end nigh? I suppose it could be. Are we going to be going on, in this realm for, hundreds and hundreds or thousands more years? I don't know for sure. I know that God's in control. And I know that, if things are horrible and they're going to end and this is all, going to be over soon, or our life is over from getting poisoned or getting something, that, for me, and I like to say this as much as I can on these shows, you put your faith and you put your faith and trust and hope in Christ as your Savior who died on the cross for you, you don't have to take the penalty for your sins because we're all sinners. And you get to we're built for eternity. I think most people realize that we have a soul that's built for eternity. You're either going, to heaven or to an eternity with God, or you're going to an eternity of hell, which is, evidenced by all the evil that's going on in this world. And it's through that sacrifice that Christ made on the cross that allows us not to have the punishment of going to hell and being separated from our Creator forever. Satan wants to keep us away from the recognition of that Creator and all that's good by polluting our world with evil, like you've discussed some of these things today. And the Creator wants us to accept Christ so that we can, be with Him forever. That's the way that I see it, and that's kind of like the hope that I would have for people, is no matter how bad it gets. And the other thing that I would say is like, hey, let's not be thinking the end is tomorrow, because we just don't know. And so let's go and work hard to make this place a better place, stand for what's right, stand for what's true, expose evil where it is, and politics, everything. We need to be getting involved with these things. Otherwise, evil and Satan are going to end up prevailing.
That's spot on. I couldn't agree with you more. And I see it also, to agree with you. It's a frequency battle between fear and hope. And if you're in fear, you're not going to be taking care of your children's future and planting a tree for them. You're going to be like, we're doomed. There's no point. But if you're living in hope, you're honoring the truth, and you're honoring your path as of God's child and what have you, and you are embracing a higher vibration that stands up to evil and is willing to fight for truth and for what is good and what is right, and honor everything that is deserving to be honored. But stuck in fear, go back to COVID, like people wore multiple masks. Where I live, still in Ashland, Oregon, there's still a percentage of the people wearing masks. They never got snapped out of their fear. They're basically useless, in my opinion, sorry. But like when you're in hope and you're on that resonance, you don't have these things bogging you down, and you can be very productive and in alignment with your path, which is to higher realms.
Have hope, get involved, make a difference, right? So you're going to be back in the area in November. So I hope we can set something up. I would actually love it if you can come teach to audience at Old State Saloon. That would be amazing, which we'll put live out on x.com and Rumble and wherever else that hasn't taken us down by then. And that would be wonderful. Maybe we can hit some topics like hidden history and some other things that had come up earlier in our conversation before we started recording. Super interesting things. The stuff that we can rely on is truth. Stuff that we don't know. How do we know truth? Deciphering between these things would also be interesting conversations to have. If you, hopefully we can make time in November when you're back out. Sound good?
Yeah, I would love to. And I think a lot of it's very biblical. If you ask for truth and ask to be guided, God will show you the way. But first you have to acknowledge that you're on that quest. And anything in person that I can do to meet people in person and show them that I'm a real human with a real heart, just on my mission and spreading the word, I'm happy to be there, because it's so important to shake people's hands. Especially after the lockdowns, I realized, like, oh my God, we have to engage with one another, because what if we get locked down again? I mean, like, being able to network with like-minded is priceless.
Absolutely. Okay, so Matt Landman, thank you very much for being here. If you haven't seen Frankenskies, go check it out, and then look for the sequel, Frankenskies Part 2, that will be out maybe next year in 2025, Lord willing. And then you can also look forward to seeing him in November when he visits Old State Saloon, hopefully. Go check out sparrowgear.com, SPERO gear.com, if you want to protect yourself and your family from all of the EMF crud that's flying through our air. Turn off your Wi-Fis at night. And thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you very much.